My daughter needs my help. She needs to stay with me because her man just left her. But you know what? I tell her this. She cannot stay under my roof. Not for a day, not for a week, not even for an hour. Heck, not even for a minute. I, 62-year-old female, have recently bought my first home. For most of my life, I've lived in government housing, so this is really a big step for me. As a young child, I was in foster care and bounced around the system until my birth mother cleaned up her act and got custody of me. Unfortunately, she was very abusive, so I left home immediately when I turned 18. Due to a bout of meningitis I had as a toddler that wasn't caught as soon as it should have been, I suffer both from hearing loss and muscle spasms. Because of this, the government provided me with a small apartment to live in when I was 20. I've been living there ever since. I raised my 2 daughters in that home, and I loved it with all my heart. Unfortunately, a year or 2 ago, I received a letter in the mail telling me that the government could no longer allow me to stay there. I had to be out within the week. Obviously, I was heartbroken. As an elderly woman with severe disabilities, I had no idea what I was going to do or where I was going to go. Thankfully, one of my daughters managed to buy some land a few years ago, and she lives in a trailer home on top of it. I stayed with her for 2 years, until I managed to save up and put a down payment on a small house nearby. It's a bit of a fixer-upper, but definitely livable. I'm ecstatic that even at my age, even with the trouble I've had in life, I finally have been able to call a place my own. I live about a 5-minute drive from my daughter's land, and her wonderful husband installed a ramp so that I can come and go as I please in my wheelchair. This is the first time I've really felt at peace in my life. My mortgage payments are high, but I can afford them. I can pay my bills and live my life alone in peace. Sure, I live alone in my old place after both my daughters grew up and moved out, but it never felt like mine. There's always a degree of uncertainty when you live in a subsidized housing because you know you could be out on your butt with the slightest whim with a hotshot politician. The issue arose when I got a phone call from my youngest daughter a few days ago. For some background, I have 2 daughters aged 37 and 32. My oldest girl is an absolute saint. She's the one who allowed me to live with her for such a long time, even though I know that it put a real strain on her and her husband. She's helped me more times than I can count, and she even refused to charge me rent while I lived with her, so I could save up for a deposit. She's a wonderful daughter. Well, we are also very close. She has no small children, just a son who she had at 16, who's now 21, and just finishing up his last semester of college on full scholarship. He's an absolute great kid, and we're also very close. My daughter's husband, he's a mechanic. And though he's not the kid's father, he did step up and raise them as his own when he met my daughter at, number 1, they're great parents and spend a lot of time with all 3 of them. She originally had a lot of debt that she built up when she was still a young girl with her first few credit cards, but she managed to pay them all off now. She and her husband are working very hard and they plan to sell the land and buy an apartment nearby. My youngest girl is another story, however. She's always been pretty spoiled and self-centered. No matter what I do, I've never been able to humble her. While my oldest moved out of my house at 18 to lessen the financial burden of keeping both of her and the baby fed and dry, my youngest had no such qualms. She lived with me until she was 25 years of age, never paid 1 cent towards the house. Now, I didn't mind this at the time. I love my girls, and you never have to be a parent to one child the exact same way you parent the other. I was happy to keep her, and I was happy to let her spend her money on partying as she saw fit. I mean, that's what you do as a parent, right? You put up with all your kinds of nonsense in hopes that when you get to an age where you can no longer care for yourself, your children will return the favor. This, however, never happened. My youngest daughter met a man in a club one night, and she could tell right away that he was very wealthy. She's always had a keen eye for wealth, my girl, and she snapped him up at the moment she saw him. They were married within the year. And then my daughter moved into his penthouse apartment in the city. I was thrilled for her at first. I'd always known that her one aspiration in life was to marry rich and live this luxurious life, and I couldn't provide for her. I had no issues with him being 10 years her senior, none at all, nor that they barely even knew each other. She had no illusions as to being in love with him, she just knew what she wanted. The problem is that, once they were married, my daughter began to call less and less frequently than before. She rarely even came to visit me, and when she did, she would just show up in her designer clothes, look all around the house I raised her in disgust. I stopped inviting her after a while, because the way she was looking down on her own mother was making me sick to my stomach. This was about 5 years ago now, and we've stopped talking regularly. I've heard from her sister, and she's behaved much the same as her. She had 3 kids since she last came to see me. When she gave birth to her own oldest, I went to the hospital immediately, hoping to provide her with the same support that I gave her sister when my grandson was born. But I was effectively shut out. My son-in-law's mother was the one holding my daughter's hand through the delivery, and I didn't even get a chance to hold the little girl. So, I just left. It was quite obvious that I wasn't wanted. I didn't bother showing up to the other 2 deliveries, as I know when I'm not wanted. I've met my grandchildren once or twice in the same time they've been born, but I hold no emotional attachment to them. I can't love them because I don't know them, besides from what little time that I've spent with them. They're nasty, spoiled children. As far as I know, they were raised by a nanny while my daughter swans around and acts like a socialite. They misbehave habitually and barely know their own mother, let alone their grandmother. While this does make me sad, I was content to leave my relationship with my youngest and her family the way it was. I mean, I didn't want to push my way in, just to appear where I was wanted. I was going to let her just live the way she wanted to live. I mean, yeah, it hurt at first, but after all these years, the loss does not quite hurt as much as it did. I was happy to stay in my own little corner of the globe, happy to be a mother to my eldest, and grandmother to my grandson, while she traversed the globe in luxury villas. Unfortunately, this just wasn't to be. I received a call from my youngest a few days ago. I was shocked to hear her voice on the line. My caller ID did not recognize the number, and we've both changed phones so many times between our last regular correspondence. So, the deal is this. Her husband asked for a divorce after 6 years of marriage. He's found some new 25-year-old who's willing to be his trophy wife. Unfortunately for my daughter, and against my advice, she chose not to sign a prenup when she got married. She's going to be desolate. Her husband is refusing to give her any money or any form of support. All of this news was rejected all over me within 1 minute of answering her call. It took a few tries for me to understand what she was saying, though, all of the wailing and sobbing, but eventually I got the gist of what she was trying to say. It sounds terrible, and a mother should never say things like this, but I wasn't surprised when I heard the news. I've long since suspected that her husband had a wandering eye, and you have to question a man who's married a beautiful 25-year-old woman from a poor family a year after he met her. So, the issue is this. My daughter has asked me if she can stay with me until she gets back on her feet, and I'm not sure if I'm alright with that. She asked me in the way of a daughter asked their mother, something like she knew I was going to say yes, but she was just asking out of politeness anyways. That's the wall I'm bumping up against. As a mother, I know that I should say yes. I brought her into this world, and part of the deal in having children is that you promise to take care of them no matter what. But I'm just hesitant. I'm angry with her for essentially dropping me from her life as soon as she married upward socially. There were times when I could have used her for help, but instead, my older daughter, with much less to her name, got me out of the gutter. It feels petty, but I was also angry with my youngest for calling me on the phone, rather than either texting me, asking to meet in person, or at least video calling. Well, she knows that I don't hear well, and it's common courtesy not to call someone on the phone who probably won't be able to understand you. On top of that are the children. I don't have the space in my house to house 3 children of another adult. There's room for me, and my eldest just to stay in the night of occasions, that's it. If I allow them into my home, I know that I'll be expected to sleep on the couch, and give my bed to either my daughter or the children. I'm just not willing to do this, especially not with my mobility issues. even disregarding that, there's the matter of the kids' behavior. They're absolute demons. They run, scream, break things, and ask strangers rude questions. I'm too old now to wrangle such young children, and if my daughter isn't getting her nanny in the divorce, then I know the bulk of the childcare is going to fall on me. I don't think I want to live with another person right now, either, let alone 4. I've only just purchased my first house, and I've spent the last 2 years cooped up in a 1-bedroom trailer with 2 other people. I'm really enjoying my privacy. If the oldest was in this kind of trouble, I'd admit that I'd take her in so quickly her head would reel. But with my youngest, I'm not so sure. I know it's part of a parent's job description to forgive and forget when their kids hurt them, and Lord knows I've done enough of that during the hellish teenage years. But I'm not feeling very forgiving right now. She dropped me and her sister like a hot potato as soon as she didn't need us anymore. And now she wants to swan back into my life like nothing has ever happened or changed. A few months ago, she would have sniffed at my little 2-bedded bungalow, seen it as far below her, but now she wants to live here, huh? And there's not a single doubt in my mind that the first thing she'll do when she comes to stay is to make snide remarks on the size of my new house. It's not huge, it's not grand, and it's certainly below the standard of living that she's become used to in 6 years. But I'm very proud of it, and I won't have her speaking badly of it at all. I don't really have anyone to talk to about this, and that's why I'm making this post. I became familiar with this website while living with my daughter, and it suddenly struck me that I could just ask you, beautiful people, for advice. I can't ask my oldest because I know that she'll tell me to just forgive her sister. She's a big ol' softy, and can't hold a grudge against anyone. She's also very protective of her little sister and feels very responsible for her. I feel like I'm a terrible mother for wanting her to stay away and for having no desire to reconnect with her. But at the same time, I've done my parenting duties. I brought her up safe, warm, dry, well-fed. I taught her right from wrong, and I loved her with all my heart. She's the one who decided that she didn't want to be my little girl anymore. Not me. She set the tone for this relationship we have now. I'm just following her role. I've told her that I'll think about it for now, but I know that she'll be expecting an answer within the next couple of days, and I just don't know what I'm going to tell her. Anyways, I wait for you guys' advice with anticipation. Thank you, everybody. Update number 1. Alright, so I still haven't called my daughter back and it's been 3 days. I've come across some new information though from my oldest. Apparently, a few years ago, my youngest was in a car crash that left her injured. I don't know how exactly or where, as no one bothered to tell me about it when it happened, but it's left her with an unfortunate addiction to painkillers. Due to this, my soon-to-be ex-son-in-law has had her declared as an unfit mother. So, she won't be getting custody of the children in the divorce. Honestly, I feel this might change everything. I wasn't prepared to take on the care of 3 young children, especially those 3 in particular, but if it's just my daughter who I'm taking in, I can effectively ignore her and still seem like a fantastic mother for taking her in. I'm still trepidatious, though. My eldest got a text from her sister explaining the situation, and she's taking it as pretty much done. She's excited to have her sister back, and she doesn't seem to feel any of the caution that I do. I'm nervous that she'll be very angry with me because I'm really leaning towards saying no. Well, I've been avoiding my oldest ever since I found out that she knew about the situation, as I'm nervous that she's going to push me to say yes. Some of you guys on here have been very, very helpful, and I really have to say that I appreciate it so much. Others have been less kind, but I understand. It's like having a little voice in my head that every mother has, telling you that you're failing your children, but somehow magnified and streaming onto your computer in a never-ending barrage of notifications. Some people have also suggested that instead of allowing my daughter to live with me, I just offer to pay her rent in a new place for a few months until she's able to pay it herself. I'm not sure these people fully understand my financial situation, because that's just completely out of question. I have a little left over every month after my mortgage, bills, and groceries, but nowhere near enough to finance an entire apartment and put that money into a retirement fund. On top of that, I'm positive that she would end up picking up an apartment that's both out of mine, hers, and our combined price range. Others have told me to suggest that she moves in with her sister in her trailer, but I have no hope that either of them would agree to that option. My eldest has only just gotten her home back to herself and her husband after my living there for 2 years. I also don't think that my youngest would agree to it either. I think asking to live in my 2-bedroom bungalow is enough of a blow to her self-esteem. I'm not sure she could bring herself to live in a trailer, even for a very short period of time. Though it would probably encourage her to get her act together a lot sooner than she would be living under my roof. A few people have also gotten upset with me for the blunt way I described my daughter, and the way I talk about her. I want to make it very clear that I love both of my children with all my heart, but I'm trying to be realistic about the situation. I do love my youngest, but she's undoubtedly spoiled and ungrateful when people go out of their way for her. I think every mother looks at their children with rose-tinted lenses when they're young, and I'm guilty of the exact same. While the tint was true to live for my eldest, who is kind and giving, I was wrong about my youngest. I feel like it's my fault that she got herself into this mess she's in now. I tried to teach her about hard work, honesty, and kindness when she was young, but I clearly failed to express these values. I should have encouraged her to make her own way in this world, rather than allowing her to fantasize about marrying a rich man. If I taught her all of these things, she would have been so utterly and completely reliant on her husband for everything like she was, and would not be dissolute now due to a whim of his. She went from being my child to his in many ways, and never learned to be an adult. It's a difficult thing to have to learn at 32, but I have every single faith that she'll manage. I won't lie and say that my hesitation to take her in is due to some motherly instinct to teach her to fend for herself. That would probably make me look a lot better of a mother. But honestly, my mind didn't even go there. It's completely for selfish reasons that I want to remain alone. First is that I'm enjoying my peace. I'm only 2 years away from retirement age, and I don't want my children to get the idea that it's still my responsibility to take care of them. I'll support them as best as I can, but once they moved out of my home, I stopped needing to be a mother before I was myself. After all these years of being in foster care, going to live with my own mother, living on the streets and government housing, and being a mother, I've only just begun to really craft my own identity. For someone who's been told what they are for their entire life, foster kid, homeless, disabled, this chance is invaluable to me. Second is that I'm still hurt by the way my daughter practically abandoned her family because of our social status. I fed her, changed her diapers, and gave her unconditional love, and all I got in return was barely a backward glance as she climbed the social ladder to get where she wanted. I've heard of the people in my old neighborhood whose daughters married rich, and their kids always financially supported them. They bought their parents' houses, helped them retire early, and financed all their vacations. My own daughter did not even bother to thank me for everything I did for her. It may seem petty, but I'm not just a mom, I'm a person, and I don't like being treated as disposable. When your kids are younger, it's your responsibility to put them first and almost ignore your own needs. But once they're grown, that's the time you take for yourself, and that's what I'm doing. That's not to say I've made my decision. These are just the reasons I've puzzled out to why I'm finding it so difficult to just say yes and take her in. There are reasons for me to say yes too, though they aren't nearly as emotionally complicated. They mostly just boil down to her being my little baby girl, and me wanting to make her life as easy as possible. But then I think about the fact that I made her life for her so easy when she was young, and this is where she ended up. It's difficult, but kids have to learn hard lessons sometimes, and while their parents will always want to step in and help, it's important to let them learn themselves. When my eldest turned 18 and got her first credit card, I tried to warn her how quickly those debts pile up. I tried to tell her, but she ignored me because she thought she knew best. She had to learn these lessons herself when she was $30,000 in debt with a 25% interest rate. She learned. Now she's 36 and finally paid them off, but the situation taught her something. My youngest has never had to face those sort of consequences until now, because when she was little, I wrapped her in a bubble wrap and protected her, until she managed to find a big strong man to take over, and look how that went. I still have a lot to think over. I know this update makes it seem like I'm leaning towards saying no, and really, I am, but not as drastically as it may appear. My reasons for saying yes are not nearly as complicated, so I don't need to puzzle them out. My apologies to everybody who came onto this post, hoping for a little mother-daughter drama, and ended up neck-deep in my self-exploration. It wasn't my intention to bait you like that. It just helps me to write things down, and there's no way I could talk about this with my oldest. Thanks again. I'm sorry for the long update. Update number 2. Hey, this is a very short update. It's been about a week now, and I finally made a decision. It's been about a week since I got the call from my daughter. She hasn't called me since, which I appreciate. I'm going to let her stay with me, but I'm going to make it a condition that she pays what she can towards the house. She isn't a child anymore. And honestly, it would do her no good to treat her like one. I guess mothering instincts won out against my self-preservation in the end. I know that my mental health is probably going to suffer from this decision, but I'm just hoping that the situation will be short-term and that I can get back to the normal routine soon. I just want to give a big thank you to everyone who offered me advice and support during this time. I can't express how much I appreciate it. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So there's a third and final update to this absolute roller coaster of a drama. Well, we are here now. If you guys are new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito, and I read stories every single day of some of the most dramatic stories on the World Wide Web. If that sounds like something you're into, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and don't forget to press those notification bells so you don't miss the upload. Alright, let's hop into the third and final installment. Hello everyone, I didn't expect that I'd be writing another update for this post. I felt like I left things pretty settled. But new events have come to pass that I believe you people would be interested to know. My daughter will not be moving into my home. I know that a lot of you will be surprised at this after I've made such a big song and dance about making the decision. But just read the full update before you slate me as a bad mother. I tried to call my youngest a few days ago to let her know that she could move in whenever she was ready, but the phone call would not go through. I tried multiple times to get through to her, and I even tried to send her a text message, but the sending said it failed. Thinking that it was just my phone playing up or my service, I called my oldest to test it. The call went through right away, and my oldest answered the phone, but she was not happy to hear from me like she usually is. She was very cold and abrupt. I tried explaining that I could not get through to her sister, and she made a little noise in the back of her throat like a scoff. I was confused, as we hadn't talked in a few days, so I didn't know what I could have possibly done to upset her, so I just asked her straight out if she was upset with me, and lo and behold, she says yes. I'm very confused at this point, and I did not think that I've done anything to warrant her annoyance, so I asked what's up. Apparently, my youngest called her the very day she called me and went on a rant about what a bad mother I am for not agreeing to let her move in right away. My oldest tried to placate her and stand up for me. She said that I've probably just forgotten to call back. Now that I'm thinking back, this is probably the reason she came over and told me about my son-in-law getting custody of the children. We've had many conversations about their behavior, and she probably thought that I was hesitating because of them. When I still had not contacted my youngest, she called up her big sister to complain. And the pair of them have been talking about me behind my back, saying terrible things and calling me a bad mom. My youngest daughter even blocked my phone number. And that's why I wasn't able to get through to her. To make matters worse, when I was speaking to my oldest, I called her using a video call so that we could sign to each other, as I always do, because I'm hard at hearing, and I could see my youngest in the background laughing. I'm so beyond hurt. I don't even think or know what to do, let alone say. I hung up on my oldest without even bothering to say goodbye. And I have no doubt that that's going to end up as another black mark on my parenting, according to them. I'm just so shocked that my oldest would join in on her sister's nonsense. This is exactly something I'd expect from my youngest, as you can probably read through this entire post. I don't have the highest confidence in her maturity or loyalty to me as her mother, but I really did think that my eldest would be better than this. I didn't think she would get swept away in her sister's drama. We've talked so many times over the past 6 years about how hurt we are by her abandoning us and going no contact as soon as she achieved the life she wanted. I was always a bit more upset about it than my oldest, but that was natural, as it's different for a mother rather than a sister. My oldest was still very offended herself, and that's why I can't believe she's taking her sister's side in this. What makes things worse is that I was calling my youngest to tell her I've decided to let her stay. It took a lot of sacrifice for me to come to that decision, and a lot of self-reflection into things that I really would rather kept buried. But she was angry that I did not agree straight away. Well, she still thinks of herself as the baby of the family, who should be protected and dragged through life at her family's expense. Unfortunately, my oldest is feeding into the ridiculous notion for her. I don't think that I'm going to be speaking to either of them anytime soon. My oldest will miss me sooner or later and try to contact me like nothing's ever happened, but I won't be letting that slide. It's time for both of them to realize that I'm a real flesh and blood person with feelings, not just their mother. I just feel very betrayed by my oldest daughter. I felt betrayed when my youngest abandoned me and cut off all contact, but I've had 6 years now to process that, and the sting has not nearly been as sharp. The betrayal from my oldest, though, that's a fresh wound, one that I don't think will be healing anytime soon, even if I spray it with salt. I don't see how this post could ever really warrant another update, unless both of them suddenly show up at my door with tears filled in their eyes, ready to hug me an apology. But I don't see that coming. If I don't update again, you can assume that that hasn't happened. Thank you to everyone who provided me with their help and support. I really appreciate it. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. I just want to tell you one last thing about this story. This story is a few years old. I found it deep in the web, and so that tells us that what OP suggested was correct. Nobody showed up at her door. No eyes filled with tears ready to hug out for an apology. It looks like there's still no contact ever since this last post, oh so many years ago. Wow, this had betrayal written all over it, but I did not see it coming this way. I knew that the youngest daughter would probably never reconcile completely, and it just seemed like she had so many red flags. But the fact that the youngest daughter was able to win over the old daughter, it just blew my mind because the oldest daughter had such a close bond with the mother. Let me know your thoughts about this, guys. I know the story kinda left with a cliffhanger, but it's been years and nobody's updated, so we can only assume that OP is no longer in contact with her 2 daughters, which is heartbreaking and sad at the same time because the whole argument was pretty petty. But I would like to know your thoughts about this story, guys. Drop your opinions in the comment section. I want to welcome anyone who's new to the channel. My name's Mr. Reddito. I read stories every single day of the most dramatic stories I can find on the World Wide Web. If that sounds like something you're into, consider subscribing. All you have to do is press the subscribe button directly underneath this video, and then when you press that, press the bell notification after it so you get alerted whenever I upload a story. Guys, have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!